On this episode of What's Going On with Shipping, the hearings have started on China's maritime dominance. I'm your host, Sal Mercogliano. Welcome to today's episode. So, the U.S. Trade Representative through Section 301 have initiated a hearing. They have published a report, and now they're accepting public comments on China's maritime logistics and shipbuilding dominance. 2 days they are hearing from people who have views on this subject. Unfortunately, for some strange reason that is beyond my ability to fathom, the hearings are not being televised. They're not being streamed. There's going to be no audio from it. All we're going to get is a transcript from it. Why that's happening, I have no friggin' clue, except for some reason they don't want us to hear it. I should note that we did get audio from the last hearings they did, but from this one, nada, nothing. And so to me, to the U.S. Trade Representative, what the is going on here? Because we should have the audio and video from it. They got a YouTube channel. They've done Section 301 reports in the past. They're just not doing it here. We're going to look at this today and talk about it. If you're new to the channel, hey, take a moment, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you'll be alerted about new videos as they come out. Here is the U.S. Trade Representative site, the Section 301 report. Again, the hearing, initial hearing on this was done back in May 29 of 2024 based on a March 12, 2024 petition that came in from 5 unions. This was all during the Biden administration. This is the subsequent issuing of them with their report, but also for a request for comments. The key thing that came out of the report was a proposed fee schedule for vessels calling in the United States that were either Chinese built or were part of a company that was either Chinese owned or had Chinese vessels in their fleet. So the 5 national unions that petitioned are listed above. They requested this hearing. And what we found from the U.S. Trade Representative is that China is targeting for dominance burdens or restricts U.S. commerce by undercutting business opportunities for and investments in the U.S. maritime, logistics, and shipbuilding sectors, restricting competition and choice, creating economic security risks from dependence and vulnerabilities in sectors critical to the functioning of the U.S. economy, and undermining the supply chain resilience. This is the report done by the Section 301 investigation. I'll have links to both the report and the video I did on this. So I just want to highlight this. This is the schedule for today. It started at 10 a.m. is March 24th, 2025. Panel number 1 are representatives from those 5 unions who are coming in. Panel number 2, the second panel you get to hear from, China Association of the National Shipbuilding Industry and China Ship Owners Association. For some reason, they are the second panel going. Then there's going to be a congressional statement. Then you have a series of panels. You'll see a series of panels. A lot of these are from shipping associations and commerce associations. So, for example, the American Soybean Association, the American Apparel and Footwear Association are all going to be there. But then panel 7, you have the World Shipping Council. Joe Kramick is going to be giving a talk. The World Shipping Council, which represents all the foreign flag carriers that move commerce, and along some American carriers. I should say there are American carriers in the World Shipping Council, but predominantly they're foreign carriers, are giving a talk along with the International Chamber of Shipping. So what is the U.S. Trade Representative proposing? I pulled this from the World Shipping Council site. I always think the World Shipping Council is one of those nefarious sounding organizations like you would hear in a Bond movie or maybe an Austin Powers movie. But anyway, this is what they're proposing. They do a good synopsis, so we'll give credit to the World Shipping Council for this. So they're talking about fees of between $1 million to $3.5 million US dollars per port call. The fees will result in fewer port calls, particularly to medium and small ports. Fees could add $600 to $800 per container TEU 20-foot equivalent unit for goods moving in and out of the U.S., hitting farmers particularly hard. It's nice they're concerned about farmers. I wish they had that same concern a few years ago when they were prioritizing taking empty containers out of the west coast of the United States back to the Far East, back to East Asia to load, and leaving containers loaded with grain and other commodities on the dock. That would have been nice for them to do. Goes on here, 98% of all U.S. port calls could be subject to fees under this proposal because these fees apply not only to Chinese-built ships, but also to any operator with a Chinese-built vessel in their fleet. This could apply to companies, for example, like Matson, that does have Chinese-built vessels in their fleet. Of course, Matson could just get rid of those ships. These fees amount to an additional tax on American consumers of up to $30 billion. They also could cut into the profits of the companies represented by the World Shipping Council. They left that out. Going on, the cost to ship U.S. exports could double. $1 trillion in imports could be impacted. A majority of proposed fees would apply to existing vessels or vessels under construction, which would not disincentivize current shipbuilding practices. It would disincentivize using Chinese-built ships. The next element they have is a really interesting series of charts. So here, the World Shipping Council went to great pains to graphically show you what this imp will have. So if you're operating from Europe to the U.S. East Coast, you are a non-Chinese operator, so you're one of the major European shipping firms. You have Chinese-built ship in your fleet, and you have Chinese ships on order. You can incur up to $2 million in every port call. Over here, you see the Asia to the U.S. West Coast. Not as big an impact because they don't come to as many ships on the West Coast service. Same thing on a Gulf Coast service. But the one that gets probably the most attention is this one here. Asia to West Coast service, where you're a Chinese operator, you're a COSCO, the Chinese Overseas Shipping Company operator, you're a Chinese-built ship in the fleet, and you have Chinese ships on order, you can hit up to $3 million in each port, maybe up to $6 million per voyage. So I don't know many ships that come to the U.S. East Coast and hit 6 ports. I doubt you're going to see 12 million. Five is a reach. Usually it's about 3 to 4 is where you see this. On the West Coast, 2 ports, what you may see them do is go into Vancouver or Prince Rupert up in Canada and minimize down to 1 port. But these are potentials. So what does this mean going forward? Well, let's look at some news stories that deal with this topic. I got 10 for you. Let's take a quick look at them. So first, there was some guy who runs a YouTube channel who posted a comment to the U.S. Trade Representative, and it was published here at G-Captain. You can see it yourself. Yes, it was me, truly. I put a historical perspective on this. I did not come out either way for the fees. I'm always very careful about that. I always don't try to get myself on one side of an issue or not. So I just laid out the historical reason why the U.S. Trade Representative is doing this. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at those other stories. So this story by Mike Schuller over at G-Captain, the U.S. Trade Reps proposed China port fees could cost container shipping over $100 billion, an expert warns. So John McCowan, very well-known commentator on container shipping, put together a report where he said that the container shipping sector alone could cost over $106.9 billion annually. His report is a really detailed one. I'll have all these stories so that you can take a look at them. But John coming out here is really highlighting the case that we may see anywhere from $500,000 to $3.5 million being charged per port call for some vessels coming in. So this story from Bloomberg kind of really synopsizes the gloom and doom, the kind of the sky is falling. $1 billion U.S. levies on Chinese ships risk, quote, trade apocalypse. And in this case, they're looking at an issue of a shipment of 16,000 metric tons of steel pipes that could incur a surcharge of between $1 to $3 million on it. Again, we're going to see those case examples used repeatedly here. Then this story over at Lloyd's List, U.S. port fee plan open to a legal challenge. Legal challenges to the U.S. trade rep port levy proposals are theoretically possible, but litigation will be a costly risk. Chinese-built ship controlled by a Chinese operator with other Chinese vessels in the fleet could attract a total levy of $3.5 million per call. 20% of U.S. port calls last year were made by operators that had vessels on order in China. 70% of them had at least one Chinese-built Chinese-built vessel in their fleet. So the Chinese vessels are everywhere, particularly in the container ship and the bulk trade. We see them used a lot. Now, a lot more Chinese-built vessels are out there. Remember, 51% of ships built last year and delivered were built in China. That number is going up to over 60%. We're looking at maybe potentially about 65% of ships on order coming out of China. This story over at the Journal of Commerce, the U.S. Trade Representatives, China's tonnage tax would squeeze smaller trades stakeholders. So again, what we're hearing is this idea that it's going to start squeezing out smaller ports. The idea here is to see the smaller ports raise up and cause an issue, but also some distinct services. So for example, this story looks at services coming out of the Caribbean and, small traders coming out of that region and the impact they will suffer. Then you get this story, U.S. port fees won't hit China shipyard, says BV Asia head. Now, BV Asia is a car carrier. International ship owners have no plans to cancel orders for new tonnage placed in China due to the trade rep's proposals. Chinese ship owners have big expansion plans with numerous further orders in the pipeline. Global shortage of skilled shipbuilding workers means any expansion of capacity elsewhere will be challenging. That is China throwing down the gauntlet right there, telling you, listen, go to Korea, go to Japan. They already have ship issues over there. Their shipyards are nearly at capacity. They are short of shipyard workers. And for the U.S. to do this, it's going to take you years to gear up. It's going to be really costly. And you have a shipbuilder shortage also. Where are you going to get the workers? Basically, they're telling you China is the only game in town and you're stuck with us. And I should note that's the reason why the trade rep did this investigation. Next, the week in new building, Japanese yards do pick up some orders for roll-on, roll-off ships and bulkers. MOL Energia orders ethylene tanker pair from South Korea's Samsung Heavy Industries. Mitsubishi Heavy Industries wins a trio of roll-on, roll-off cargo ships from compatriot ship owners, and Wisdom Marine Lines signs up for 2 handy-sized bulkers at Japanese shipyards. I think the winner in all this is going to be Japanese and Korean shipyards. They are just dancing about this. This story out of the Journal of Commerce, escalating tariffs will cause profound trade pattern changes. This is according to Costco, the Chinese overseas shipping company, not the big box store that has a T in it. This doesn't. I want to read you this quote here in the article. Container shipping demand growth is set to moderate this year, the carrier said, thanks to the combined effects of an easing of, quote, global inflationary pressures and accommodate monetary policies in Europe and the United States. So the Chinese overseas shipping company is concerned that profits are going to go down. That's really interesting until we go to this story next. Costco Shipping doubles profit. China's largest shipping line reported a 33.3% growth. That's right, a 1/3 growth in revenue and a 105.8% increase in net profit for 2024. A 6.1% rise in total container throughput, up to 144 million TEU, 20-foot equivalent unit, and a revenue growth of 4% to 10.8 billion yuan. That is a $1.5 billion profit. And Costco is worried that the escalating tariffs will cause profound trade pattern changes. Yeah, I think they're worried about it eating into their profit margin. This story over at Lloyd's, box rates still sinking, but disruptions due to port fees could spur rebound. So the Shanghai index, showing the Shanghai to U.S. West Coast index now down 63% versus late January peak, with rates to U.S. East Coast down 55%. The Shanghai index and Drewry global composites are back to levels seen in December 2023 at the onset of the Red Sea crisis. The U.S. Trade Representative plans to initiate that $1 million per call port fees could lead to congestion and push Asia-U.S. spot rates back up. Well, let's look at those spot rates. This is the Freightos Baltic Composite Index. You will note here how low rates were prior to the global supply chain crisis in 2020. Then it spikes during the peak of that, 2021 into 2022 and 2023. It bottoms out to levels pre-COVID, early or late 2023. We saw those rates absolutely bottom out. And then thanks to the Houthi in the Red Sea, we saw those rates ding back up. They are still up there. They're not quite down as low as some people are saying, but they do fear that the rates could bottom out even further with these proposed port fees. With that, if you come over to Alphaliner and look at the major carriers and their percentage of profitability, you'll notice that since 2010, profits for container liners had really been bouncing between positive and negatives for many years. It is 2020 into 2021 and 2022 where you see just those record profits for them. And then those profits drop off into 2023. They actually go negative in the fourth quarter of 2023. And then here come the Houthi. And the Houthi all of a sudden have this huge spring back here for the carriers. And now the fear is that the fees may lower freight rates even further. So, how do the ocean carriers deal with these proposed fees? First off, let me say, I don't think the fees are going to go in as proposed. I don't think the fees are, number one, fair because, if you put $1 million fee for a ship to come in, that doesn't care whether the ship is a 1,000 box ship or a 15,000 box ship. And that spreads the fee inconsistently. I think you will probably see a fee per box done or a fee per tonnage come in. That's going to be more appropriate. I think the ocean carriers will do what the ocean carriers do and ensure their profitability. If I've got to pay a fee to come in to a U.S. port, I'm going to do a couple of things. Number one, if it's a flat fee, I got to come in. If I got to pay $1.5 million, $2 million, $3 million coming to a port, I'm going to bring in the biggest honking ship I could bring in. I'm going to start bringing in big ass ships. I'm going to bring in my 15,000 TEU vessels, which means that instead of getting, service maybe by two smaller ships every month, you're going to get one big ship coming in once a month. That's going to disrupt supply chains a bit. Second, I'm going to cut back the number of ports I'm coming into. That's going to be a big impact on the East and Gulf Coast ports, meaning you're going to start jamming cargo into ports up and down the East and Gulf Coast. You may get more volume into some ports. That is going to cause what we saw happen in LA and Long Beach back in 2020 and 2021, where we overload the ports because the ports are not going to be geared to take that. I don't think you're just going to go into the big three, New York, New Jersey, Savannah, and Houston. I think you'll go into one of those and maybe a smaller regional port. And, the carriers will find themselves with those ports. It's going to disrupt terminals. Terminals are going to be the big disruptor. Right now, they're sitting there kicking themselves. They didn't get more automation into some of these ports, probably, because if that happens, they're going to want more productivity out of the ports. The reason the ocean carriers didn't push automation is because, number one, they couldn't afford it. Even if they wanted automation, they can't afford it right now because of their vessel replacement program. Second, they're going to want they need automation because they were offloading 20 to 30% of their ship at multiple ports. Now, if they got to come into just two ports on the East or Gulf Coast, now they got to offload 50% of their ship. That's a whole different equation. That's LA and Long Beach equation. So I think the hearings, number one, again, I go back to this. Why, friggin' U.S. Trade Representative, did you not broadcast those hearings? I know I'm the only human being in the world that wants to watch this, but why not televise it? You've televised them in the past. Again, go to their YouTube channel. Those shows the past 301 hearings. No, you had audio for the initial hearings. This time, nothing at all. Don't understand that. Okay. But what are you going to propose going forward? I think their recommendations are going to get changed. I don't think they hold solid to what they initially recommended. And what we're seeing is an impact with just the recommendation. Remember, nothing has happened. Nothing's been implemented yet. Yet you're already seeing the ocean carriers beginning to change. This is going to impact containers. This is going to impact bulk carriers. It's going to impact tankers. It's going to impact everybody because they have Chinese vessels in them. And again, go back to my historical paper I did where I talked about the fact that England dominated trade in the late 1800s going into the early 1900s. This was a big problem. It caused the United States, for example, to want to fire up its shipbuilding base because what happened during the First World War is the U.S. Exports piled up in the dock. Couldn't move international trade. We need to be able to move international trade. This is going to have an impact. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. We're going to keep following the U.S. Trade Representative's hearings. I am watching intently. I'm not watching. There's nothing to watch. There's nothing to watch, nothing to hear. So I'm going to have to read transcripts. Maybe I'll use my AI and have that read to me the different hearings. But we've got nothing to show you or hear you unless I reenact the U.S. Trade Representative hearings. That may be something we do here on what's going on with shipping. Not going to do that. I don't have that much time to do that. I would love to, but it's not gonna, maybe sock puppets. We can do sock puppets for the different people and do it. I will come up with something interesting here at what's going on with shipping. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, hey, take a moment, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell to be alerted about new videos as they come out. Leave a comment, share it across social media, and if you can, support the page. How can you support the page? Well, you can buy a streaming service and a video camera for the U.S. Trade Representative so they could perhaps broadcast this. Are you getting the hint that I'm upset about this? Because I really am. If you can support the page, what can you do is you hit that super thanks button down below, give the show a big thumbs up, spread it across social media, and head on over to Patreon and maybe become a monthly, yearly subscriber. Hey, 4 years of what's going on with shipping today. 4 years today, myself and John Conrad got together and did a video about the Ever Given. Yes, it's the Ever Given. It's not the Evergreen. It's the Ever Given. Evergreen across the side tells you what company it belongs to. Name on the stern on the bow tells you what ship it was. It was the Ever Given. 4 years ago today, John and I kicked this off. I had a grand total of 130 something subscribers to my YouTube channel, which was just me, and posting some videos from lectures. I think we had 3,000 people watch our video that day. It has changed quite a bit, almost at 420,000 subscribers. It has gotten a little bit crazy here at what's going on with shipping, but that's why we love it, because global shipping never stops. There's always a lot of ship happening around the world. Until our next bit of ship happens, this is Sal signing off.